What I'm going to take you through in this video is looking at the next step in developing an assessment tool. We're going to start to consider how we develop options for collecting evidence and the methods that we might select. Now, if you recall, we were looking at the unit Use Business Technology as our example of developing an assessment tool. Now, I want to continue with this unit, but remember, as we were looking through this unit earlier, we were looking at how we had a big picture of where exactly we're going to go with this unit, and then we examined the elements and performance criteria to give us a bit more detail, and we drew some conclusions, which is what I've added here in red writing, about what each one of those, in summary, elements and performance criteria represent. And we did that for all three performance criteria and the elements that relate to this unit of competency. So now we're going to take it through to the next area of the unit of competency to see what else we can tease out that helps us to actually determine the best assessment tools for this particular unit. Now, as I scroll down, we typically have in a unit of competency what we call foundation skills. I'm not going to dwell too much on this. For the purposes of designing and develop assessment tools, we do consider them because they will be expressed in our performance criteria in the unit, but we will map them later on. But we're just going to fast forward a bit further down and look at the next area that we can draw some methods collecting evidence based on what we're going to actually do. Now, as I scroll down this document, you can see that I've got here copy from assessment requirements. So this part of the document, I've simply copied it to integrate one document for Use Business Technology. It doesn't come like this from TGA, but rather than swap and change between documents, I've just copy pasted this area for the unit of competency in the one document. Now, as you are familiar with units of competency, there are two areas. There is an area called performance evidence and there is an area called knowledge evidence. And then further down we've got this thing called assessment conditions. So this document here, which is the assessment requirements, actually tells us, what must people do? And that is what we consider often the performance evidence, because skill and knowledge are the two things that make up competency. What people can do, the skill, what people know, the knowledge. So we're going to examine in a bit more detail what it is that the skill or the things that people do need to look like, and we're also going to see down here what the knowledge that people who complete this unit looking for competency would need to be able to do. It is fair to say that the performance evidence and knowledge evidence are a summary in many ways of what the elements and performance criteria are about. They kind of tell us in action what they need to do or create or produce, and they also tell us what they need to know. And I suppose at this point the way I would describe using this information is to say to yourself, well, what is it that this describes in the performance criteria and the elements, and is anything left out? So I suppose in many ways the performance evidence is complementary to the elements and performance criteria. It tells you maybe in practical ways what are the products and what are the processes that you would need to demonstrate in the assessment tool that we're going to design. So we can capture those things in the tool, in the what we call the instrument of the tool. We look for places where we can actually make our notations. We can capture our insight. We can capture, be it questions, what the candidate has said. And then the knowledge, obviously, this is where we capture what they've expressed to us as to why they do what they do or what they understand. So you can already start to see that tools will have an element of what can they do? And that doing is about products and about processes. Products are things they'll produce. If you need to produce an assessment tool, for example, as we are doing now, well, you've got to develop that. It's something that's produced. But if you've got to conduct a training session and display sound communication skills, then that's probably more of a process. And so therefore our tool would reflect that. And then our knowledge would be about questions. And the assessment conditions tells us about what are the environmental conditions to our assessment to actually developing this tool. Now, the assessment conditions in this example are about doing it in a safe environment, typical activities experienced in work, using this sort of equipment. And also you could in some cases use case studies and interactions. So this gives us some insight into what exactly are going to be the methods we're going to use between the performance evidence, the knowledge evidence, and the assessment conditions. We should be able to start to see the environment that this learner will need to display their skill in so that they can be deemed as competent. And so then the next stage, which I will cover, how do we then start to capture these products and processes and the information as far as their knowledge into what we call an instrument, which is part of a tool that allows them to demonstrate competency.